To quote Mark Twain, 20 years from now you'll be disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones that you did do. So throw off the bowline, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the wind in your sails and explore, dream and discover. And that's my wish for all of us.
Hi, Soundri. Welcome to the Success with Savita podcast. And actually, before we get started, I do want to share something. We've been chatting and for a while now, and I felt like it was so easy to speak to you, to get along with you. I felt like it's so easy to do that. And sometimes when you're doing that, we forget how accomplished the other person is, how many achievements they have. And so I was just going through your profile right now, and I was like, oh my God, I have so many more questions to ask her as well. But I'm so excited to have you here and having you join me and my audience on this podcast. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Savita. I feel the same thing about you. Definitely, the connect has been very instant.
Yeah.
Technically, we don't need know each other for a very long time, but I feel the connection. So thank you for creating an environment where it is like that.
Yeah, it's all down to you. And on that note, I think we'll dive right in because I really have a ton of questions for you. And my first question is having, of course, gone through all your accomplishments, let's start right at the beginning. Share with us your journey so far from the time that you were here in India to having moved to Hong Kong. For those who are listening, Sandri is joining me from Hong Kong. So share with us a little bit about your journey so far.
Thank you so much. Let me look at it from a little bit of a personal perspective and a professional perspective. So grew up in a regular middle class South Indian household where my parents very clearly measured riches by hard work, academic focus, and leading a happy life. So my dad was one of 8 children, and growing up, he realized his village was not going to hold his ambitions. And one of the most dynamic persons I know, always curious, learning new things, and very self-learned kind of a person, and helping others with his knowledge after he learned that. And my mother grew up in a cultural background, very rich cultural background with and religious household, where women didn't really step out and study. But her dad wanted us to make that change for her. So she went to school in Sarada Vidyalaya in Chennai, but family circumstances were such that she started working when she was 17, which absolutely shelved the dreams of going to college. She had to travel great distances through public transport and trains, when not many women of her background were even stepping out of the house.
Right.
So education was a big driver for us, and it was the courage to be independent, to be brave and carve a path for ourselves. So for my sister and I think that was our theme. And growing up, every summer during school and college, I would come up with a list of summer classes that I wanted to attend and pester my parents for money to register in them. It was small amounts, but I'm sure it felt large at that time. My parents never said no. And in that process, I ended up doing different things: singing, dancing, puppet making, drawing, tailoring, shorthand, typing, quiz clubs. And I think, if you have to say, what did you graduate in? I graduated in summer classes. And this continues to date in terms of, love for checking out new things. I will always sign up and keep trying new apps and new tools, new courses. So that's more on the personal side on what drives. Professionally, I did commerce, and I joined because my sister was doing engineering and I didn't want to do the same thing. So this is how randomly life choices get made. But luckily, it turned out well. I loved accounting, and I remember through school and college, I would fill every notebook that I could lay my hands on with
Mhm.
T-shaped accounts.
Okay.
They were there all over the place.
Okay.
And then I moved on to working for Lipton, and I absolutely loved my job. What was initially just a management accounting and commercial manager kind of a role, the work was very holistic, and it gave me a great sense of business
Mm.
acumen, not more than what I got at my MBA school, just hands on, being there, learning from people around. Long hours, but very fulfilling. The move to ANZ, and there's a big backstory to it, but that is for another time.
For sure.
uh, Handling retail branches, that opened my eyes to really looking beyond domain expertise,
Mm.
working with people and leading teams. So
Mm.
that was that really carving that niche
Yeah.
for me at work.
Yeah.
Then a couple of years later, we faced another decision point. My husband got an offer to move to the Middle East, which means we had to move to Bahrain.
Mhm.
My eldest daughter was a year old, and I was really working hard, trying to balance a new baby and a new job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, but we reasoned that moving to Bahrain would mean I would spend more time with her.
Mhm.
And I was also pretty certain that I'd find something part time to happen.
Mm.
Like I say, doing jig even before I knew that such a word existed.
Right.
And the whole thing of enjoying new geographies, new cultures, new work opportunities, that sort of opened the next bit, which is on consulting.
Right.
So then the move to in Hong Kong in 2006 was actually relatively easier in that sense.
Okay.
And this whole work towards helping leaders and teams use stories in a business context and bringing
Yeah.
humanity to the workplace.
Yeah.
And we see that being even more relevant now.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So
and it's work
thank
in progress.
yeah, thank you for sharing that. I hear you saying that you chose commerce very randomly, right? And I feel like that is also one way to approach. Today, I find a lot of the young, in fact, I currently have an intern program going on, right? And all of them, if you ask them what's next for you, what are some of your goals, there's this whole anxiety around finding my purpose, finding my what's for me, what do I need to do. But what I hear you say is that you may have chosen it, but you found your own path. And sometimes at that age you don't know, or when you're just choosing a program you don't know where it's going to lead you. So it's very interesting that you should share that, because today's context is all about, you do so much research before you choose what you're going to study next as you get into college. So that brings me to, you do you're a business storyteller, right? That's what you teach people to do as well. What led you to storytelling and why? Like, is there like a catalyst that led you to this specific niche?
Yeah, no, definitely. Um, I think we were working in Hong Kong with organizations,
Yeah.
and I was remember listening to a podcast by John Flint, who's the past CEO of Hong Kong Bank
Mhm.
here, and he mentioned in the podcast that in his 30-year career, he has produced 1 million slides, PowerPoint slides, and nobody remembers anything that he has said in that.
Okay.
Whereas he has told stories along the way, personal stories about his high points, about his low points, successes, failures, and people are still talking about it.
Mm.
So you realize that stories are a great way to engage with people. So
Yeah.
facts and figures, as they say, go to the head, and stories go to the heart
Uh,
and leads to engagement.
mm.
And as we kept working, we are living in a content rich and content saturation environment.
Yeah.
Some stories are seen, something is not heard, something is not shared. And
Mm.
we are living it out now, right now during COVID times.
Yeah.
So a lot of the conversations from the clients were around saying our leaders are not inspiring.
Mm.
When they talk, people don't remember them.
Mm.
The staff engagement surveys show that leadership communication is a real problem.
Mm.
People talk about strategy and change, and it sounds like they're making something up.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Or you find values as words which are hung in the wall. You go into any swank corporate setting, you find all these catchy words in the wall.
Yeah.
But we don't know what it means when you work. How does it pan out?
Right. Right.
Salespeople are not connecting, and so on and so forth. And that really led us to stumble into the natural power of stories to address some of these
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So
it's not so
that's
much also about storytelling.
yeah.
It is, you want leaders and people to be effective.
Hmm.
So it
Yeah.
is just a tool per se,
Mm-hmm.
a powerful tool to add to your repertoire, and
Mm-hmm.
really using some of these small anecdotes and examples
Okay.
to
Yeah.
do that. Mhm.
Uh, so, our topic when we were chatting, we said, hey, we're going to talk about humans at work, right? And how, like, when we say that, or people, I actually know someone who runs a company called Humanize. What do we mean when we say humanize your brand, being human at work, or how to not just be like how to build a connection, how to build this heart connection that you shared? So, can we talk a little bit about what is being human at work? What does it mean? And yeah, so just tell that for my audience. What does it mean to be
Sure.
human at work?
Sure. Let me link it to a small example instead of talking in abstract.
Yeah.
So, just for example, as facilitators and coaches,
Hmm.
you could tell people that it's important to read the temperature of the room.
Yeah.
And how, as again, as facilitators, how can you change it to help others to amplify their presence?
Yeah.
Now we hear these sentences. Yeah, we get it, of course.
Yeah.
Will we remember it? Will we make ourselves memorable by doing that? Not sure.
Okay.
So I remember Raghu Krishnamurthy, who's an ex CHRO at GE, when he talks about future of work, he shared an example about a man who was struggling to pick up cues on video calls,
Okay.
especially now when everything is online.
Hmm.
So for 1 or 2 weeks, that man was just interrupting people when he
Hmm.
should not be interrupting,
Okay.
or he was silent when he was asked to speak because
Okay.
he was just absolutely missing the cues,
Yeah.
right? And that's when his manager actually listened with her eyes. She
Hmm.
noticed that on the call and she called him up and said, what's wrong? Just help me understand. You don't seem to be where you should be. And is there something I can do to help you?
Hmm.
And he was so grateful for the conversation. He told her that he was actually on the autistic spectrum, though it was
Hmm.
not very obvious. And he
Hmm.
was really struggling to catch the conversational cues online.
Okay.
And this got her thinking, and she said, okay, let me figure out a solution. So, over the next couple of meetings, she instituted a new protocol saying every time somebody wanted to interrupt, they would hold up a pink slip.
Okay.
Or if somebody had finished talking, they would say, Roger, just like you do in a walkie talkie
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So, people found it strange at the beginning. But she explained to them that one of our colleagues is finding it difficult to follow everybody. And therefore, she was instituting these rules to make sure no person was left behind.
Hmm.
So, as managers, we really have to listen with our ears and eyes
Hmm. Okay.
and really provide that emotional first aid, as they say.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's not something that we normally used to do.
Yeah.
So, which is why instead of just saying you have to read the temperature, if
Hmm.
you, instead of theorizing around it,
Yeah.
if you share an example, it paints the picture very clearly and drives home the message without being preachy.
Yeah. Beautiful story. That makes me emotional. But um, so okay, so we get like like you're sharing. These are things that you should do to kind of go beyond just like you said, strategy. My most hated word when I was in the corporate world, blue ocean strategy. We always had to think out of the box and come up with blue ocean strategy, which we didn't understand either, right? So it is increasingly like. online world, especially with work from home, right? What are some ways that we can still have connectedness and still maintain that humanness in our day-to-day interactions, especially when we are either online or if we're just speaking on the phone? What can we do because we're not seeing each other face to face and don't have that emotional connection?
Yeah, I mean, just saying blue ocean strategy and all those jargons, you are like triggering reactions.
Right.
Yeah, so many jargons and abstract terminology, which makes us glaze over, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, so I was seeing this joke, one of those, I mean, meme factories have been
Yeah.
ruling the ground, right? So I was seeing
Yeah.
this joke where an interviewer is asking, tell me more about your background.
Mm.
And the interviewee replies saying, oh, that's Mount Kilimanjaro, referring to the virtual background on Zoom.
Right, right.
So
Okay.
taking, what was offline to online is something that we've all struggled with. We've all had to work on. It's
Yeah.
not something that we've organically been great at,
Right.
right? So two things, I think. One is being more present in our conversations. I remember we were on a work Zoom call and I noticed that the person on the other side was writing with her left hand.
Mm.
And I commented about it. I said, hey, you're also a fellow left-hander. And she was quite surprised that I noticed. She didn't realize that in the screen the hands were visible and all.
Mm.
And I think that's also a great way of noticing something and building a connection.
Right.
That's what it is. We are all one pixels in the Zoom world.
Right.
So we have to pay that much more attention to it. And
Yeah.
also about managing distractions.
Mm.
So we say it's like, from a facilitator point of view, we say it's audience before content.
Mm.
So really, how do you connect with your audience before you talk about anything that you want to talk about? Because
Yeah.
unless that connect is there, they're not going to listen to you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I read this I heard this from one of my friends. He was talking about, when we talk about leaning into conversations,
Yeah.
he used an acronym called UFO,
Okay.
which is being upright,
Mm-hmm.
leaning forward, and being open. So from a voice perspective as well. So that's a catchy word to remember,
Yeah.
UFO.
Right. Oh, that's a great tip actually. UFO. I'm going to remember that. And that's how you're actually using. These are things that you can retain, like from a conversation, versus if you told me like, "Hey, Savita, here are my three tips. Number one, like do this. Number two, do right." Maybe I may remember or may have to listen to the conversation a few times, but
Right.
UFO stays very easily. So okay. So I mean, great tips. I
Yeah.
do you,
If I can
yeah,
just
go ahead.
add, yeah, if I can just
Sure.
add on, the second bit, this is on the physical bit,
Yeah,
noticing
yeah.
thing. The second build, which is true offline as well, which is even more true figuring out online, is how do you build, grow, and deepen relationships.
Mm,
And, for our online clients, we are just a two-dimensional form.
right. Yeah,
Right. So it
yeah.
becomes very challenging and you have to put in that additional effort to build that relationship.
Mm,
So you're not looking them in the eye, you're not shaking hands.
yeah.
How do you do that? And I saw this really nice incident that happened. So there's a sales coach called Sherry Leviton,
Okay.
and she talks about an experience that she had during the pandemic. She was looking to buy a car, she was looking to buy a Porsche,
Mm,
and she lives in this place called Park City in Utah.
mm,
And there are two Porsche dealers there, Porsche or Porsche, however you say that.
yeah.
So one dealer was 45 minutes away from her place, and the other one was 2 hours away.
Mm,
So she does the first thing like we all do when we're buying things online now. She looks at the
yeah.
website.
Yeah.
She looks at the different cars and all that. And she calls this guy who's 45 minutes away and says, okay, can you send me the information regarding these three cars that I'm shortlisting?
Mm,
And the guy on the other end says, ma'am, no, you have to come here to test drive it.
mm,
And she just literally loses it and she screams into the phone saying, we are in the middle of a pandemic. How can you even suggest that to just check it out? You want me to just send me the message online?
mm,
And he just keeps repeating the same thing, say, no, no, you have to come to the dealership.
mm,
So she gets really frustrated, puts the phone down and says, okay, this is the faraway dealership, but I'll call that guy.
yeah.
And she gets on a call with this guy in the second dealership, a guy called Sean, who she says again, can you send me the information? And Sean says, sure, we'll send it. And says, why don't you get onto a Zoom call with me and let me understand what is the exact car and color that you're looking for. And maybe we don't even have it in our shop. So why don't we do that? So she says, I'm looking for a white car. I want beige interiors, which is an unusual combination for that model.
Okay.
So Sean helps her co-design and co-create that on Zoom.
Okay.
And she says it's a tough combination. So she's given up. I mean, she says nothing's going to come out of it and she's forgotten. 2 days later, Sean connects with her on LinkedIn, starts following her videos, her content, and he uses multiple channels to just keep in touch with her. And she's thinking, okay, a bit too much, but let me see what happens. And then a few more days later, she gets a video text on her phone of the exact car that she's looking for. And that car is coming out of a car trailer. Those trailers which have these cars that they use, wrapped up like a present. And Sean is there in the foreground recording, saying, hey, your car is coming in today. If you want to come into the dealership, you can take delivery. And she was not even sure of buying the car. But with all this that he has done to personalize, customize, giving all that video content, she actually goes and buys the car.
Okay.
So the whole customer process now in the online thing, people are not buying linearly. You have to meet the customer where they are, use as many channels and create, great buying experience and also create that wow customer delight moment.
Yeah. Absolutely. I like Sean for sure. And I think there's so many business lessons and sales process lessons that you can take away from him. But yeah, I mean, it's such a great story. And I like how you're like sharing how you can do this online, right? And before we go ahead to my next question, which is around humanizing, right? What I wanted to ask you was before you like even started, and we are on the topic of connectedness, before you started, you've gone to different countries. Did you find it challenging? Or what are some of the challenges that you yourself faced, especially going from being in corporate to starting a business? Share with us that experience and the challenges that you had.
Right. Sometimes the challenges are very clear in retrospect rather than at that time. At that time, you're in the thick of those things.
Yeah.
And you're a coach. So, you always say that learning happens in reflecting about the experience.
Right.
So it's definitely more a reflection rather than. So I think each of the career pivots were a challenge. But specifically in Hong Kong, starting a business while just registering the company was very easy. Hong Kong is one of the most organized places. Registering the company was like a breeze. But getting work in a place where we hadn't worked in the corporate place was a bit of a challenge. And I hear this from a lot of coaches and others as well. Business development, nobody wants to do it. I was coming from sales, so that bit was not a daunting bit. But I think always there are challenges around, oh, I know my content, I can design, I can do this, but don't ask me to do business development. Putting ourselves out there can be a challenge in a new place, especially. And it's something like, especially entrepreneurship for somebody who had the safety of a career, the corporate job.
Yeah.
It's like going skydiving. So you have the parachute packed on your bag. You're tied up and linked up to your instructor. You're standing on the edge with your arms flared out. And you're looking at the sky and it's looking great, but you're looking down at the world below. There is that whole adrenaline rush that comes in, which is both fear and excitement.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is the fear of just getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Which is the first battle, which is with ourselves.
Yeah, true.
More than anybody else. And I think that's the journey as an entrepreneur, balancing that fear and keeping that excitement. And it can be a lonely, long journey. You're doing this now. So, so you really draw on yourself quite a lot.
Yeah.
in terms of, all those so-called words on perseverance and resilience and all that. But also remembering that it's a marathon, not a
Mm,
sprint.
mm, yeah.
So telling yourself that, yes, I'm going to do this and I'm going to try this and it's okay. Some of it will work, some of it will not work. And I think to that end, I've been very lucky. I have a great pool of advisors, whether
Mm,
they know it or not. They are
yeah.
my advisors. I keep calling them, and people from various walks of life. People, I just pick up the phone and say, I need to talk to you. I'm facing this.
Mm.
And, taking that support.
Has been something. So,
Mm.
so many aha moments for me because I resonate so much with this having come from the corporate background. If I'd known how hard, like entrepreneurship was never my dream, if I'd known how difficult it was going to be, I would never have pursued this, right? Because you always feel like, yeah, I have so much experience, I think this is going to be easy, but it's easier said than done. And you're right, it's such a lonely journey, and often it's all about second guessing yourself. So, I mean, interesting to hear that most entrepreneurs, most people have literally the same um experiences and same challenges. And I'm sure you had many more, but you are like, these are the things that helped you deal with it, right?
Right.
So, I wanted to move into, staying on the subject of how to, I mean, being human at work, I wanted to ask you to share a couple of examples of humanizing a personal brand because often while building a brand, people either share teachable content or their
Right.
accomplishments. And I also say this because I also teach personal branding. And people either feel like either they're doing a lot of only accomplishment sharing or not doing enough, or a lot of them feel like, okay, let me just talk about what I know, so do this, do that. So somewhere the human part of you, the authentic part of you, the storytelling actually doesn't come, all of these things. So can you share a couple of examples of how anyone can really humanize their personal brand, and how do you do that?
No, I love how you framed it, because this is the kind of content that we see, right? And
Mhm.
lot of the times it's about vanity metrics.
Yeah.
How many likes have you got? How many shares have you got? And sometimes we forget that there's a human behind that.
Yeah.
And while it is important, I think there's a lot of importance to, having that kind of a marketing analytics is useful for business.
Yeah.
But that cannot be the prime driving factor, especially in the context of where I'm coming from and where I'm working, the spaces that you're working as well,
Yeah.
right? So, I was a late entrant into Twitter. I got
Mhm.
into Twitter as part of the COVID thing in
Okay.
March
Okay.
2020. That's when I
Okay.
got into Twitter. And when I say got into Twitter, it's still a very minuscule account kind of a thing. I don't even post every day.
Okay.
But when I wanted to get onto it, I asked my nephew, who is big time into Twitter, I said, I need a class,
Hmm.
because each media, each
Yeah.
tool
Platform.
has a way of doing things. There's an algo of
Hmm.
working in that platform. So to just
Yeah.
understand. So he gave me a 1 hour crasher. I religiously took notes and all that. And I was thinking, first post, what shall I write? And I was really that clueless.
Mm,
Even after following people on Twitter, I was still quite clueless.
yeah.
So I wrote about Feed My Chennai, which
Mm,
was this initiative where they were trying to help feed migrant workers who couldn't go back
yeah.
home. So they were
Okay.
creating a kitchen and they were funding that kitchen. So a friend of mine in Chennai was involved with it. So I said, let me talk about it.
Mm,
It's a great cause. I had contributed to it. So let me talk about it. So I just posted that, used all their social media links, and just like literally just did that. And afterwards, I think about 3, 4 hours later, I saw this, icon, notification icon on Twitter. And I said, what is this? And that's when I figured out that you could send personal messages on Twitter, which I didn't know. So there
okay.
was this lady, Chumki Bharadwaj, who works with India Today. She had sent a message saying, hey, is this your initiative? We are looking to cover a feature of a lot of this work, this kind of work that's happening around India. and we want to cover it. And I said, no, not my work, but my friend's work, and give me a minute and let me find him and I'll connect him to you. And I connected them, and they, she covered Feed My Chennai, KBN Foundation, I think the name is, I forget the exact name of the foundation. And they got a lot of coverage because of that. And so sometimes when we talk about brand and where we are, it's not about amplifying us, but also making it vulnerable and connecting and amplifying others.
Yeah.
And that's one way of humanizing the brand rather than saying, everybody knows Twitter, everybody knows, say, India Today or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's about actually taking it to that segment. And
Mm.
sharing stories helps us be
Yeah.
comfortable with that vulnerability and make that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like people really get stuck when you say, share some personal stories. And the challenge is, how much should I share, or how much should I not share? Or what if I don't have, like, in one of my other conversations also, I was saying, what if I don't have, we're watching so many other people online. So I don't have a hero's journey. I don't have a heroine's journey. I have a very normal life. Nothing bad happened. Nothing mind blowing also happened. So what story do you want me to share? What's your advice to people who ask that question? What's your tip?
No, it's not advice, it's more personal reflection. I feel that constantly.
Okay.
So even when Colors of Hong Kong was asking me to talk, I said, I mean, it's an ordinary journey.
Hmm.
Touchwood, life has been great. Really, no significant pain points. Touchwood, and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is very ordinary. And I was chatting about this with a friend of mine, and he gave me a very good take on it, which he basically said, sometimes we can't relate to all these heroes.
Hmm.
When you hear about a journey of a Jeff Bezos or a Steve Jobs or Melinda Gates and Bill Gates, we
Yeah.
can't necessarily relate to it directly. We are inspired, but ordinary journeys are what we can connect to directly. It
Hmm.
is somebody like us.
Yeah.
So this thing on, obviously this is a fiasco on Twitter for me. I mean, it's not it's as in, at least started off as, I have like about 150 odd followers on Twitter, which is, not even worth mentioning in a public platform kind of a
Yeah.
thing. But it doesn't matter. It's really, one, being comfortable with your skin, and two, if, and this we say in storytelling as well, in terms of sometimes we are not comfortable about sharing our personal stories,
Hmm.
and that's okay initially. Maybe we can talk about somebody else's stories,
Yeah.
and that triggers some action.
Hmm.
Like, I was reading about this lady Sarika Kale,
Hmm.
who's an Indian Kho player from
Hmm.
Maharashtra. And she became the captain of the Maharashtra women's state team in 2010.
Okay.
And she led the team to many national championships, and she won a lot of awards and all that.
Yeah.
She started playing Kho when she was 10 years old.
Hmm.
And but it was a tough choice. Her father was dead set against her playing sports. He stopped talking to her.
Wow.
Her mother and her grandmom were house helpers, but they supported her. And her grandmom actually, Sarika was very upset when her father stopped talking and all that. She said,
Yeah.
no, no, let me give it up. This is
Yeah.
like, it's too much. It's a young girl trying to deal with, being sports and all that, and it was too
Yeah.
much. Her grandmom actually went and spoke to the coach and said, my life and my daughter's life has gone off this way. I
Hmm.
don't want Sarika's life to be that.
Okay.
So please help her. Please don't let her drop out. Please ensure that she continues.
Okay.
And Sarika went on, obviously, to lead the country to, championship wins and highest. And she got one of the highest sporting honors for India as well. And she's glad that she stuck to it. I
Yeah.
think so. Sometimes hearing stories about others also inspires us to be better versions of ourselves.
True.
And when we share anecdotes like this, maybe we have a problem.
Yeah.
Maybe we are grappling with some situation like this where we are having some backlash and we are
Mm.
figuring out how to deal with it. It motivates others to action.
Yeah.
And that's like, triggering stories which
Yeah.
trigger action.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to look at it. Like, even if you don't think you have something to say right now, to get the journey started, share other stories, amplify it, and then you will find something opening up for you. You will get more comfortable. And maybe something is going to come out, something that you didn't think was a story worth sharing, then probably you will share. So, yeah, thank you for that story, because, I had also not thought about sharing so many other stories, because sometimes it just you're like so caught up in your own world. So I'm definitely making notes on that.
If I can
So
just,
yeah,
if I can just add on to it, and
sure.
especially I think in a corporate life,
Hmm.
sometimes when you're going to and talking to a client, say,
Hmm.
it could be sharing the company's story. It could be sharing a story about your product, how your product came about,
Yeah,
an insight into why you do what you do.
yeah,
So that's also another way of looking at it. So it's
yeah,
not just, always about you and yourself. That gives a good sense of the people. You don't have to list your credentials.
yeah,
You let your character speak for itself when you
yeah.
share something about a glimpse of you.
Hmm.
But at a corporate level, there are so many other things. You design a new product. Why did that come about? Why did that design come about? What
Hmm.
problem did it solve? So sharing a narration around that is a great way of
Yeah,
doing it as well.
yeah,
And that's where business storytelling has like so many different aspects to it. The connection part is a prime piece
yeah,
because people won't listen to you unless they connect to you.
yeah.
But there are other aspects as well.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question that, it just occurred to me as you were sharing. So when you're saying business storytelling, and, let's say I come to you and I'm like, Sundari, I have no idea how to do this business storytelling. What is your starting point for anybody? Where do you get people started? Like, like, for example, if I have to switch it, when anybody comes in for coaching, the first thing that you always do is what's your vision, what's your goals, what's your why, right? And then it's obviously, if it's business coaching, then we go into who's your ideal client and what's your product offering and what problem are you solving or what need are you meeting. Likewise, if I came to you or anyone comes to business storytelling, I have no idea what all these words sound great. I mean, humanizing work, humanizing my brand. Where do you start? What's the starting point, and what's your advice on that?
I mean, the starting point is pretty much the same because, like I
Okay.
said, it is not to become a better storyteller or to become, J.K. Rowling's of the world or anything like that. It's to be a better leader to drive a certain outcome.
Yeah.
So, what is the outcome you're trying to drive? Why? Why is this the solution? So, even before you go into a solution mode, it's like really looking at your problem statement.
Yeah.
What are you trying to solve? What are your current pain points? Like I said, we get contacted to say, our sales leaders are talking like they're brochures. They're not talking like human beings.
Mm.
That is a starting point.
Okay.
So really probing into what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What are the, outcomes that you want for yourself and your teams?
Okay.
And how can this be used as one of the tools to drive those outcomes?
Okay. Yeah.
So
So I
pretty
see that.
much, I mean, it is a business process.
Yeah, and I see that. Yeah, it would have to be about what goals you want to drive. So coming back to you, I'm very interested. What does a day in your life look like? I'd love to know the behind the scenes of your life.
Well, actually, my husband and I are very new to the empty nesters pool. Our second one has just, gone to university. So we are still trying to figure out what was life like before and what did we do and what has happened, kind of a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's where I am in the space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a relatively early riser during the weekdays. I love playing tennis. So I play
Okay.
about 2, 3 times a week with a bunch of friends.
Mm-hmm.
Never going to go to Veterans Wimbledon, but I love the game. So I'm at it. And I'm also feel that I'm at my creative best in the morning. So as against what everybody else will be saying, am on WhatsApp once I'm with my coffee.
Mhm.
Coffee, newspaper, WhatsApp is my best trio combination.
Okay.
I love to read articles and listen to podcasts in the morning. It's sort of my inspiration. We used to have morning huddles on Mondays, and we would have calls, meetings, programs with clients, our social media work, and all that. So
Okay.
that's typically the day
Mhm.
part of it. I'm involved with a lot of mentoring programs, so
Okay.
tend to keep some time for it in the evening,
Mhm.
so I can connect with my mentees or with the organization, or work on we are working on this program called Empower here in Hong Kong for ethnic minority university women,
Okay.
to help them build skills and build networks.
Okay.
So I'm spending some time. We are working towards our third year, end of third year. So I'm working on the graduation piece now. So that's
Wow. But
really exciting.
that's an interesting initiative, actually, to especially being in Hong Kong and doing this, right? And
I
you
think,
have a very
like
busy
when you
life.
come, yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you come into a new place, this is again of a thing from moving places. When we
Mm.
come into a new place, sometimes we hesitate, we hold, we wondering, what to do, when can I get started, kind of a
Mm.
thing. But a lot of the time, it's just jumping in and connecting with the community and
Yeah.
people around us, truly
Yeah.
looking for how you can make space for that, and how you can look at touching lives at some level. And this is one of those part of it. And I think we connected through Aspire for Her foundation, the work that's
Yeah.
there as well. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I think it's I do pottery, so some evenings goes on that.
Nice.
And, I'm not a great gym person and all that, so I try to walk and play, and that part of it, not so much on gyms.
Mm-hmm.
Book clubs, I'm part of
Yeah.
2 3 book clubs, fiction and non-fiction.
Yeah.
Friends reading, watching Nadal's matches and any tennis games, catching up, and trying not to be on WhatsApp till late. I think that's the toughest bit that I'm struggling. So typical days
Okay.
like this. And I remember
Yeah.
there was this TV interview where Bill Gates peers into Warren Buffett's diary. So he has a
Okay.
small notebook, really small file of facts kind of a notebook. And
Mm-hmm.
Bill Gates looks at it and he sees that Buffett has only one entry or maximum two in a day, or even
Mm-hmm.
days when he has no entries. So I think that's my dream book. So you get a lot of time to think, do, introspection, create content, design, think, and
Yeah.
not crowd it with back to back meetings or calls.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Wish list
And
there, Savita. I
yeah,
can
I know. Nice. Nice. I mean, looks like you're speaking about my future wish list. But before I let you go, as we come towards the end of our interview, I do have one more question. I think, like you have, with all that you shared, you have a fully packed, grounded life, of course. And it's interesting. I'm always interested to hear how everybody else's day is. So what are some steps that you are applying to your own life in this dynamic times? Is there some one two things that you do where you're dealing with the change as well, and how are you doing it?
I think I'm really clinging on to, what we say as learning mindset, growth mindset, looking at feeding curiosity
Mhm.
and assuming positive intent. We tend to become
Yeah.
very judgmental about a lot of things. So I'm consciously working at that. And the
Mhm.
curiosity piece, I think, is really important for happiness. I was reading this Angela Duckworth. She wrote this
Yeah.
book called
Grit.
Grit. Yeah,
Yeah.
and she's also part of this podcast called No Stupid Questions, along with Steve Dubner. And she writes this blog called Character Lab. So she talks
Mm.
about this research about curiosity going in hand with happiness. So
Mm.
for 21 days, participants were told to keep a daily diary where they responded to different measures of well being, and they had to, in
Mm.
addition, answer two curiosity questions. The
Yeah.
questions were: today, I viewed challenging situations as an opportunity to grow and learn.
Mm.
The second question was, everywhere I went today, I was looking for new things and experiences.
Okay.
And on a scale of 0 to 10, not at all to very, the
Yeah.
average rating for these curiosity questions was around 3. So that was quite a bit lower than she was expecting to find. But there was a lot of variability across the dates and across people. And it turned out that consistently high ratings on these curiosity questions were correlated with higher levels of life satisfaction, flourishing relationships, feeling competent, being able to do physical exercise, and all that. So I really want to be in that space. To
Okay.
quote Mark Twain, 20 years from now, you'll be disappointed by the things that you didn't do than by the ones that you did do.
Yeah.
So throw off the bowline, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the wind in your sails, and explore, dream, and discover. And that's my wish for all of us.
Yeah.
And to do that very safely, of course.
So beautifully shared. I was actually going to ask you what's that one piece of advice that you want to give women who are overwhelmed, and I think this is something that's so beautiful to lead the conversation with. But of course, you're welcome to share if there's anything else you want to share with the audience, and especially to women today who are really overwhelmed, doing a lot. The hustle is real. Sometimes we romanticize it,
Right.
and I don't think that should be it. But your last piece of advice to before we close, it's not going to be last, I'm sure, but for this interview.
No, sure. No, advice is a big word, but I think something that we're all learning to do, and there are these Listen Molly who do Instagram, and they talked about this arch, which I post on LinkedIn. I don't know whether in the show notes we can share that graph.
Yeah, I can.
Every day looks very different. So it's like almost like an arch. Being our best looks very different, and the line goes up and down like that, which is exactly where it is for all of us. And I think we need to be kind to ourselves. We need to take that moment of pause. And I will still quote a tennis legend. A lot of your young audience may not have heard of him. It's Arthur Ashe, after whom a stadium is also
Yeah,
named.
yeah.
He says, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can.
Amazing.
So just get on with it in some ways, but just do what you can. It's fine. I think we judge ourselves more harshly than the others.
Yeah.
Cut yourself some slack.
Great advice. Cut yourself some slack is something that we all need right now as we chase perfection and so many other things. So thank you so much for that wonderful sharing of mantras. Actually, I would say it's a mantra more than advice, and also for sharing so many tips. UFO will still stay with me though, I have to say
I have to
that.
thank my friend for it. I heard it from
No,
him.
but you repeated it, so it'll stay with me for sure. And I look forward to staying connected with you. Wish you all the very best in your journey. And thank you so much for being so generous with your time and being here today and sharing so much with everyone. And I'm going to share how people can connect with you on LinkedIn in the show notes. And, people can reach out to you if they have any questions around personal branding, any of these areas, right? And
No, thank you so much, Savita. I loved it. I enjoyed the conversation and I enjoyed connecting with you. You make it so easy for us to, come and have that conversation. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You're very kind. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Yeah, you too.
And thank you for being here.
Yeah, bye.